Hey there, welcome back to the Startup Leader Show again. We had a question right at the end of our broadcast last time, so we thought, hey, we're just going to go back on and answer that question. And it was all about, hey, how are you going to deal with space debris?
So, long time no see, first of all.
Yes.
Second of all, there's so much involved in that. The one thing that everybody's been talking about for the past little bit is questions regarding the Kessler syndrome. Uh, we were on a track to build up our population of space objects over time, and then Starlink happened, and then it just did this.
Mm-hmm.
We doubled the last I had seen was we doubled our population of spacecraft, and half of that was Starlink. The other thing that I had seen recently was something like 80% of all launches are Starlink at this point. So it's pretty wild, and we're watching multiple launches per week. So we have a lot of questions happening right now. And we've been looking at this for a while, and I've had a few thoughts, and I've discussed them with other people, and they don't seem to think they're horrible. One of my thoughts for a while has been something like the bottle deposits we used to have. When you put something in orbit, you have to put something into an escrow, and that would be dictated by which orbit it's going to be in, what its chemical composition is, and also its mass.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a scale, and it's calculable. It's something that would be understandable and predictable. When you deorbit it, you get that back. And I would go a step further and say if it can be recycled or reused in some way, then you should also get something back, maybe with some sort of a bonus. And this responsibility or right to recover would be something that would be transferable. Because one of the considerations is, so what if your company goes bankrupt before you get to deorbit all your stuff? Whose responsibility is that? Like, where does all that stuff go to?
Sure.
And generally, it's like, I don't know, maybe it gets sold in liquidation. If it doesn't have any value, then it doesn't get sold, and it just dies on the books. So one of the things that I would say is, we know that burning up one spacecraft, one satellite in the atmosphere is going to be of zero environmental impact. Burning up 100 million is probably pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's somewhere between 100 million and where we are, and we don't know where that ends up. We do know that stuff that you put in the upper atmosphere is much more persistent than stuff that gets in the lower atmosphere, because the rain doesn't really wash it out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have other considerations. Also, the space between the Kármán line and like 200 or 300 kilometers is one of the least understood regions of our atmosphere, because you spend so little time there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that you can put anything up there for a long amount of time. You know, below the Kármán line, you can put balloons up there, and they can last for months or weeks or years. Well, nobody's done one for years, but anyway, you can put stuff up there for a long time, and you can take measurements.
Sure.
Up above 200 kilometers, you're actually in orbit, and we've had stuff up there continuously for decades. So we have a good understanding of that, but we really don't have an understanding of that 100 to 200 kilometer region. And it's a big region if you think about it.
Yes.
So we're because we are approaching, because we're going logarithmic on our satellite populations. We have not just Starlink, we have OneWeb, we have Kuiper. Kuiper's actually putting stuff in the air now. We've got the Chinese constellation. I believe India's looking at doing something. I'm not sure what that is, and I'm not sure what the timeline on that is. And I feel like there's another commercial internet that I'm not intentionally leaving out.
Perhaps Telesats.
Huh?
Perhaps Telesats.
Oh, yeah. So we've got all that. we're going to have a lot. We're going to reach a big number way sooner than we had previously anticipated.
Sure.
If you asked somebody 10 years ago, like at what point we're going to reach 100,000 spacecraft, they might be like, oh, that's easy, 100 years from now.
Huh.
But now the answer is probably going to be like, I don't know, 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we really need to address this before it becomes some sort of a giant snowball thing that is glaringly obvious to everybody.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
the best way to do it, I believe, is to start recycling and reusing things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the FCC was trying, to a certain extent, right, was recently trying to address the space debris issue. And I know they did issue um, a
25 years, I believe it is.
yeah, only 5 years after the mission ends, right, to actually deorbit your spacecraft. So I think some things are going into place, but obviously this is not just a US consideration, it's a global consideration. So and of course, as we put things into orbit around the moon and other places as well, that's going to become even broader questions will come into play there. So, yeah, it's a big question.
Once you get beyond Leo is, I hate to say it, but it kind of is, but it also isn't. It's a self-cleaning orbit. Stuff there does fall down. Now, once you start getting impacts, some of the impact debris goes up, some goes down, some goes tangentially. So that's not exactly a clean, neat, tidy thing to say. Oh, it just stuff goes down from Leo.
Yeah.
But once you get into Geo, nothing goes down. Not on any sort of realistic time scale. So you're going to have stuff that stays up there for a very long time. Now, you also have the benefit of, if you look at it as an onion skin, Leo is a very thin skin. Geo is a much thicker skin.
Mm-hmm.
So it's bigger in terms of radius, but it's also thicker in terms of thickness. So you can get away with a lot more there. You still have a lot more elbow room. One aspect that we need to deal with is better situational awareness, knowing more precisely where everybody is, every object is. My spacecraft, your spacecraft, and the dead spacecraft that we're also having to maneuver around occasionally. And then the question is like knowing where all the bolts and paint chips and if there's still any gloves up there, any of that stuff. Knowing where that stuff is. Now, I do feel that for larger spacecraft, not necessarily huge spacecraft, but things like Vespa class and up, things like the size of a coffee table and up, recovery and reuse is going to make sense. CubeSats, letting them burn up is less of a consideration for me as the way I see it, because on the one hand, you have stuff that is, single kilos, not 100 kilos. So it's going to take a lot more of those to equal one ESPA class satellite.
Sure.
And also they are more prone to completely burn up because you've got a lot smaller pieces. You don't have as many large chunks to survive reentry.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that burning up in the atmosphere is a 100% unmitigated wonderful thing. I feel like there's probably going to be some considerations for that we're going to notice in the next few years.
Indeed. Well, it is a big topic. I like some of your ideas, so hopefully the the powers that be and our international space agencies and all of that will really consider doing some of those things because, yeah, it's absolutely something that will need to be addressed sooner rather than later.
And I would also say that if we do have some sort of a bottle deposit, that turns into a noticeable escrow account.
Yeah.
And that escrow account could be deployed to help with satellite deorbiting and also recycling efforts. For instance,
Absolutely.
if somebody has paid their deposit and now they are unable to claim the deposit because they have gone bankrupt, then that could be recovered by whoever deorbits it, and
Yeah.
that would be a bit of a derelict claim, which is going into some of the laws of the sea stuff, but and I know the space industry likes to avoid using maritime law as a precedent, but I feel in some of those cases there's going to be a distinct overlap.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a place where you can get some benefit from similar problems that have been seen before.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much for making time to rejoin and answer that last minute question that we got before we ended our last interview. So, a topic that I think we could talk about for a really long time. And like I said, hopefully, we'll see some policies and regulations coming into place that will address these things. I love the escrow idea. Great
Yeah,
idea.
I hope so. I wanted to come back because it's one of my topics that I'm passionate about, and I feel like it just needs to be hit upon a bit more, and not just from a deorbit Kessler syndrome aspect,
Yeah.
but also from a reuse. One of the things they say about the space industry is ad astra pro terra, which is to the stars for the Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one of the considerations needs to be to improve things here. Um,
Yeah.
every level of technology we have is always a double-edged sword. There's always a pro and a con to it, and it's about identifying the con and figuring out how to mitigate it as much as benefiting from the pro.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Rick. Obviously, the dog agrees with you as well. So
Hey, mine's outside.
thank you so much. Hopefully, we can have you on the show again soon. Thank you for making time.
Always fun.
Take
Bye.
care.